This is Unexpected with Hannah Love. In this podcast, you will gain a new perspective of how God loves you enough to call you to things that you couldn't have imagined for yourself. We are on the hot topic of really wherever Holy Spirit leads us, but a few things that I wanted to talk about today, because for those of you who do not know, Erica was on an episode with me, I think last year, with Kat Nail, and we talked about parenting, conservative parenting. So we can touch on that today too, but I really, really wanted to talk about marriage. I feel like this day and age, I don't know, I feel like Christians kind of get a bad rap, and not just Christians, but the nuclear family in general. I just think it's being attacked. I don't think, I know. I think masculinity is being attacked. I think the nuclear family is being attacked. And I just wanted to come on today and talk to someone who I know and love and respect and admire. And I look up to you and Cody. And I've had counsel from you and Cody through the years. And I just thought you would be the perfect person to hop on and talk about marriage with, because you just have so much to offer, sis.
So that just means the world to me. Because I tell you what, if you would have told me that anyone would look up to my marriage 10 years ago, it would have been a shock to me, because it definitely is something that you work at every single day. Mm-hmm. And you and I talked about that a lot. And I think the key to marriage is just making sure that you do that you remember that it's not a feeling. Love is not a feeling. I took a lot of notes this morning, just thinking about my marriage and thinking about the discussion. But gosh, you're so right. Families are attacked. And I think you've hit the nail on the head when you say masculinity has been attacked. Because as soon as people take away the importance of that strong man role model in the home, and just the essence of a family deteriorates immediately. And so I do, and I brag on my husband often. I try to do better. I've been convicted lately about doing better with Cody, but he's an incredible partner in marriage and in parenting. And so I'm excited to talk about it. I'm very excited today to talk.
It's going to be good. It's going to be a good combo today. Okay, so I guess just to get started, why don't we off the bat just name a few practical things that people can do. Maybe they're in their early years, maybe they're not, but just practical things that you can do to strengthen your relationship. I know a few things. I took a few notes too, and the first two things that I have are pray for your husband and pray with your husband. I think that the stats are out there. We've all seen the stats on divorce and divorce rates. And then I think within the church, divorce rates drop from 50% to 26%. And then couples that pray together, like actually pray together, the divorce rate drops to like 6% or less.
Wow. And I love when you bring stats. That's one of my favorite things about your podcast, is that you don't just bring the word and which is enough in itself, but you also bring the stats, because I think that's important for us to recognize there's science behind this. Even if you're not a believer and you're curious, okay, why do they think that there's certain patterns for marriage? Why choose the Lord's way of doing marriage? It's because it's statistically proven that when you do it God's way, it's the best way. His ways are higher. Yeah. And it's just
principles for it.
That's right.
He gave us principles because they work. That is the way that it was created to be. So absolutely. What are a couple of things that you would say aside from praying for your husband and praying with your husband?
I love both of those things. I think that, we hear this a lot, but just intimacy in general. I think, I was looking at the word for love in the Bible, and you and I have talked about this. In the Greek translation, there's several different words for love, right? Mm-hmm. And I wrote down eros is one. It's the romantic love. It comes with the feelings. It's a passion. And I wrote down that when you think about love, especially when you're younger, you think about that feeling that you get when you see your husband. I still get those feelings when I see Cody. I get the butterflies, all the things, But the agape kind of love that God commands us to have. And Jesus even said, he said, and let me find my note on it. Um, he said in John 13:34, a new commandment I give to you, that you love one another, even as I have loved you, that you also love one another. By this, all men will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another. And I was thinking about that and how I viewed love early on in my marriage. And I thought, date nights, and you hear this all the time. Oh, you need a lot of date nights. And it's so true. But it's not just the date nights that really ignite intimacy within your marriage.
Right.
So I would say, the conversations, going to church together as young people, we've missed out on that. That good counsel. I would say one of the things is grow together. So you and Shay mentioned in your last podcast that you listened to Dr. Dobson.
Love.
I love a good mentor. When you are young in your marriage, sometimes when you grow up in the church, you think, I don't need that. Or you had that raising as a child, or maybe you didn't. Find a mentor that's doing it better than you and see, okay, what is working in their life? And it's not just about who is the most passionate on social media, or who are best friends with their spouse,
Right.
It's truly that mentorship. So I would say find a mentor that you recognize and you say, I love the way they're doing marriage, and really think about why it is that you admire them and study that together. I think that's really important. So that would be one of the things. And you might have something to add to that. I'm trying to think of.
There's so much wisdom in that. Absolutely.
Mentors. You actually taught me this. You said, sis, you need a mentor, a mentee, and then someone in the same season of your life. Same thing with marriage. You need that in your life to be able to see that, it does work. And then that way, there is somebody that if you're really struggling, you can say, I know you walked through this. How did you get to this place? And that's always helped me so much. And you know what's sad is I've really only gotten better at that. And I'm almost 40 years old, to where now I'm.
You're not, though. You're in your mid-30s.
I feel like I'm almost 40. But yes, I would say that would be one of the main.
Now, I love that you brought up the reciprocal. So that's actually what that's called. You mentioned a mentor, a mentoree, and then that person who is on the same footing as you. One of the first things that a counselor told me was you need to have a reciprocal person it's a safe person. It's a person that loves you and that you trust, and that loves you enough to speak truth into your life, that will hold you accountable. I think that's the most important aspect of it. And I know that you do that for me. You would look at me and in love tell me that there are things that I could be doing better or things that I have done wrong. And I wouldn't take offense to that. I mean, I might be like, oh, that stinks. But knowing that it comes from someone who loves me, it's so important to have a reciprocal person. And that's you. You're my reciprocal. And I know that I can come to you about things in my marriage. Also because I'm married to your brother. So I know that you're a safe place because you love me, but you also love the man that I'm married to. That's very safe. And I actually wanted to talk about that too, because I think it's really important that women and men have a safe place to discuss their marriage and hardships, but not in a way that is negative, like putting the other person down.
Absolutely.
Because I think that we see that so much. We see it in culture, we see it in marriages, we see it in like groups of people, and even online. Have you ever been around? Yeah, it's like celebrating and commiserating. Basically, I've seen a lot of groups or been around groups where they get together and they're like, this is filling my cup, because they're sitting around talking about how terrible their husbands are. And I'm like,
and I know, and I do have to, I do have to be super honest about this. And I think we talked about this the other day on the phone. The Holy Spirit convicted me of this recently. Because, sometimes you get in this very comfortable place in your marriage where you yourself know you are totally in love with your husband. You're not going anywhere. There's peace in the home. But then you get around with your good friends and you begin to joke just about the things that maybe the two things that he hasn't nailed, right? And the
Mhm.
Holy Spirit just recently, I started thinking back in my marriage to the very beginning. And I don't know if any of your listeners are in this place, but I just want to make sure that they know I've been in this place. I'm sure you've been in this place, maybe not to the same extent. But I remember I got to this dangerous place of thinking about Cody in a very negative way to the point where you start to imagine what your life would be even without that person, right? In the very beginning of my marriage. And the Holy Spirit just brought that to my remembrance the other day when I was getting ready. And it was like I just had this overwhelming desire and conviction to start blessing Cody in this phase of
Mhm.
our life. And I was like, Lord, what does that look like? And I know that I want to honor my husband because of all these amazing things that he does. And even though with my friends now, I'm not talking about I tear Cody down, but I'll joke about the little things that I don't like. And the problem with it is I will never come back and say, but you wouldn't believe how amazing he is in this way. I just assume they're going to
Fair.
see those things. And there's life and death in the power of the tongue, as you and I have talked about many times. And so just taking the time to say, Lord, bless Cody today. He is so, and just talk to the Lord and say these things out loud so that you remember how incredibly gifted and blessed we are with our husbands. It's just as important. And with society celebrating all of their failures, we've got to make sure that we're speaking into existence, not only, oh, he's amazing right now, but God, continue to equip him, continue to bless him, continue to fulfill all the things that you have planned for him in his life for your kingdom. And so it's so important that we as spiritual leaders as well, alongside our husbands, are also blessing them. And Hannah, you do such a good job with this. And I think I know I've learned so much from you because not only are you a writer, but you are someone who really articulates really well. And so I love listening to you pray. I love listening to you talk about Shay. And I've learned a lot. And it's important. It's important that we verbalize those things about our husband.
Well, thank you. That is so kind of you to say. But I've also learned a lot of this from you. And I know that you are a safe place that I can go to. And I love that you've talked about the early years because I feel like we've all had those early years. Like the first few years of marriage are typically the toughest, I would say. And I literally remember being in a place where I'm like, hopeless. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like you feel stuck, you feel trapped. You're like, what is this life that I've like married into because my marriage is in such a bad place and there's nothing really that I felt I could do about it. That was the time where I was just like on my knees giving my husband over to God because I was
Mhm.
like, I can only work on me. I can't. I
Well,
mean, and it was a hopeless place.
and sometimes it's even hopeless as a Christian in those young married years because you know all the right things. For me, I knew the Lord. And I remember thinking every time I take my husband in any kind of petition to the Lord, all I seem to hear back is something about me.
Hmm.
And and you and I have had this conversation so many times where it's like, okay, Lord, I get it. I need to work on this. I need to work on this. And it seems like in this as you get older and you grow spiritually, you realize that everything that God says is usually changing us. And all of even David's prayers, many of the Psalms that say, Lord, create in me, search me, know my wickedness, know my heart, change me, make me like you. And
Yes.
that's who God is going to deal with in your marriage, early and late in your marriage. He's always going to convict us. And so I
That's right.
remember, and I know I've shared this with you, Hannah. I said, Lord, help me see Cody like you see.
Mm.
And that was a simple prayer, but it changed my whole marriage because then I began to see Cody like God sees Cody. And I have adored him since the moment I married him, but it has not always been perfect. But I tell you, he will, and when you pray the heart of the Father, when you pray according to the word and you're not just praying selfishly, he is waiting for you to say, things like that. Change me like you. Help me see Cody like you see Cody. That's joy to the Father.
That is so powerful. I mean, if no one gets anything else today, I hope that that is a takeaway. Instead of being like, Lord, change my husband.
Yeah.
Ask God to show you his heart for your husband.
Sure.
And in turn, what you can do when he shows you that, you're going to start seeing. And even when I met Shay, even though it wasn't the man I was seeing displayed, I knew his heart. Like God gave me a glimpse of his heart. And I would say, this isn't the man God made you. God made you a leader. God made you this. God made you this. You are. And you speak life. You speak
Yeah.
life over them. You pray these things over them. You ask God to show that to you, whether you see it or not.
That's right.
You know that's what God says and thinks and feels about your husband, and that's your husband. So that's what you say about him too. If God says it, that's what you say. And you continue to speak life. And we have 3 sons, and
Yeah.
I need to continue to remember that they are going to hear me speaking life over their father.
Mhm.
That is another like huge point, that the example that our kids get for marriage, they're going to go and they're going to have a marriage that looks like your marriage. If you don't like your marriage, you better think long and hard about what you can be doing to change it, because your kids are just going to go and find the exact same thing.
And that is a hefty.
I mean, that's kind of a burden itself.
It's a responsibility. And I'll tell you what you just said made me think of, I'm in a study about prayer right now, which, we have praying grandparents from both sides of our family and praying mothers. And it's been a real, a burden on my heart that needs to be me. I need to take that mantle on. I know you do, Hannah, as well. And we've prayed together. I love that time together with you. But I was thinking, just when you said that, when we speak God's heart over our husband, when we speak blessing over our husband, we're partnering with God's kingdom. So when God says, let heaven be on earth, we are saying, instead of my will, your will be done.
Yes.
Anytime that we speak life over our husband, anytime that we honor our husband in prayer, we're partnering with the Father. And I think so many times we put such an emphasis on how we treat the world. And this is something that I've really been thinking about lately is, as Christians, we are constantly hearing messages about, love your neighbor as yourself, treat those at your work a certain way, treat people at your church a certain way. But it starts in the home.
Mm-hmm.
It starts in the home. And man, I don't know why it took me that long to get that. But even when I wake up in the morning, the way that I treat and love Cody, that's the most important part of my day. Because guess what? The way I treat and love Cody, my kids see it. And then the way I treat and love them, that's what they're able to give to the world as well. And so
it becomes their standard.
It's important.
Yeah. What they see, how they see you love becomes their standard of how they should be loved and how they should love others.
That's exactly.
I mean,
you've heard this a million times, but you know what Mom used to tell us? She used to tell us, do not repay evil for evil or insult with insult, but with blessing. For unto this you are called so that you may inherit a blessing. That's 1 Peter 2, 8-9. But it also talks about being harmonious, brotherly, kind-hearted, humble in spirit. And I'm a feisty wife. I mean, you know this about me. And what's funny is Shay and I are so similar. We talk about this all the time. And Hannah, you are humble and kind-hearted and gentle. It's just who God made you.
I can be feisty too.
You can be feisty, but it's just you have the sweetest, most precious spirit. And so it's something that I wake up and I say, Lord, please help change me today. Make me kind-hearted. Make me more like you, because I need that. I need that to be able to pour into my family. But even if we just made that even more important than anybody else, if we made that a priority in our home, what a difference in our family, in the families.
Well, and two, this plays heavily into, and I know I mentioned this earlier, but I just think that, again, in this culture, there's such a toxic tendency to want to commiserate with other women about oh, well, he's doing this, or, he's useless, or he's this. And even it can be as simple and as harmless
Yeah.
as scrolling and like going
Yep.
down these reels where the wife is like, when I'm trying to get all this done and my husband's out, whatever. And they are funny.
Yeah.
And Shay and I just change those. We send them to each other, because we know our weaknesses.
Yep.
And it's fine. We can poke fun at each other. But if that becomes like the only thing that you're surrounding yourself with, and then you're going into groups of other women, or your husband is going into groups of other men where it's the old ball and chain and, well, XYZ, I got a da-da-da-da because she's nagging. That kind of talk. Whether you mean it or not, you're still speaking that out of your mouth.
Yeah, it's like a seed. It's going to grow.
That's right.
Anything that you sow, and I think that grows as well,
You're planting discontentment.
That's
And
right.
so I think another thing, along with like God change me, change my heart, also God give me eyes to see and recognize. And something that I ask over my boys, God, if it's not of you, like I want to feel like a supernatural, like disdain for it. Like I don't want to be a part of it. And that's not to say that I'm judging those people or that I just want to remove myself, because I want to think the best of my husband. I want to call out the truth over my husband, because that's the ultimate example we're going to set for our kids and really the future. Like, it's like you said, the family is the nuclear like unit of the world. It's like the cell, it's the building block that all society benefits from if we are healthy.
Well, you're exactly right. And I'm as you're speaking, I'm thinking, Lord, why is that? Why is the plan of the enemy to stir that up, that discontentment among women, make it? And a lot of times Satan knows exactly how to do it. It starts out as something funny. And then, and then you hear and you go back and forth, and I'm like you said, I laugh at them too, but it doesn't always end there. Rarely does it end there. But I'm like, Lord, why is that? Why is that a strategy of the enemy? Well, one of the things that our husband need, and actually it's a command from the Lord whenever he talks about, and I have the passage somewhere, but he talks about to the husband, love her as I love the church. And he gives all these commands, present her holy and blameless, all these things. There's a scripture that said, and women respect your husbands. Men need respect. Men need to be honored and respected. And I've read many, many books that back this up from great
Love and respect.
Love and respect. And so if you think about it, right, the enemy is trying to break down the respect that we have for our husband. Because if our husbands stop feeling respect, then they're not going to cherish and love as they should, because that's their need,
That's right.
And so I think it's important sometimes, as we grow spiritually, not only to be putting on the full armor of God, but anticipating the attacks of the enemy and what he's going to do next.
Yes.
And you and I have talked about this over our children. We are raising warriors that not only can anticipate attacks, but to fight boldly against them, not just when they get older, but when they're younger. They can recognize that and say, no, and respect and honor their dad, just as we honor our husbands.
Yes. No, I love that. And what's interesting about it is the enemy can be so subtle. Like he can be so subtle and slip in. And a few years ago, God told me you're the gatekeeper.
I love
and
that.
I think about that often. I'm the gatekeeper of our home, of our household, of of the music that we listen to, of the environment here. I feel like God makes women the gatekeeper of the home in that sense, when the husband is the leader. But I also feel like the gates are the ears and the eyes and the mouth. And so it's also the things that we're taking in. And things as simple as like cartoons and shows and movies. And, we hear all the time about the agenda that they're pushing. And I'm not denying it. I mean, I agree. If you look across the board at movies about just the masculinity that's being attacked, about men that are now being put in lower positions or being made the comedy, where the woman is the serious one. And I'm not saying that men can't be funny and that women can't be bosses. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is, for example, can be so subtle. I have noticed after years of watching Peppa Pig.
Yeah.
The reason Peppa Pig is so funny is because Daddy Pig is kind of the quintessential, butt of every joke. Daddy Pig is always, like silly daddy. Literally, that's kind of the tagline. It's silly daddy. And it is funny, but more and more, I've been thinking about it, and I was like, that's not a true representation of a man leading his home. It's not a true representation of a leader figure in a home. Yes, it's funny, and daddies can be funny, and, we can giggle at some of the things that dads do and also that moms do. But that should not be the representation. And I have found it more and more in cartoons and movies and shows that the dad is kind of the butt of jokes. And again, that points to that lack of respect that they are losing. And then when they lose a sense of respect, we will in turn lose a sense of feeling cherished and loved because they're not getting their needs met. And then we won't get our needs met. It's a circle.
It also lowers the standard of who they think that they need to be.
Absolutely.
As husbands and fathers, as a society. They think that is the standard. I've been thinking a lot about that, about the fact that our charge as parents and in our marriage, right, in my opinion, is to create an atmosphere of peace. Not only are we are providing a training ground for our children. I heard once, and I know we've shared about this before, peace is the goal. Kids will want to come back home if it's a home of peace. I was thinking about that this morning, and I started thinking about the armor of God and what we're doing to train our kids. Instead of handing them a laptop or an iPad or a cell phone, are we training them in disciplines? And I thought about peace, and I thought about the gospel of peace. So in the armor, the preparation, the readiness of the gospel of peace, our charge to go out and share the gospel of peace. And how cool that not only is the fact that the gospel is the gospel and the incredible good news of Jesus, but also he said, I'm going to leave peace with you. It's peace. The world is looking for peace. They're going, why isn't there peace in my home? Why doesn't the kid put the iPad down? Why is he constantly on, every single video game? It's because it's intentional. It's an intentional discipline of peace. And I read this. It's if a soldier is ready, so the readiness of the gospel of peace. And as soldiers, and we are equipping our kids to be soldiers with the full armor of God, right? If we are ready and we're fully prepared with the gospel of peace, we know the strategy of the enemy. We are confident in our own strategy, and we are planted firm. Our feet are planted firm so that we can hold our ground when the attack comes. And I thought, how are we preparing our kids to be ready for the attacks?
Yes.
We have so many distractions, so many gadgets and all these things. And I know it's easier, but man, it's not just sharing the gospel, it's sharing peace.
Yes.
It's what the world is desperately searching for, and we have it.
Yes, the gospel is the good news. That is hope. And what is hope? Hope gives you peace because you know that there is an end, that the victory has been had. Gosh, what a beautiful picture. And you're so right. And how will our kids know? Again, with being the gatekeepers and teaching and teaching discipline, but how will our children know if we are not also pointing out things to them? And I know that it may feel like our kids are young and they don't understand yet, but there's plenty of lessons that we learned from our parents that maybe we were too young for, but as we got older, we said, oh, I understand that now. So, regardless of their capacity to fully comprehend the lessons that we're teaching them, it's still sinking in. It's still soaking into them. It's still becoming part of their foundation. It's still going to be something that they come back to and they're like, I remember that mom and dad did this. And now I absolutely see why. Like, now I'm married. Now I have kids, and I absolutely
I
see.
see why they did what they did. Let me
Yes.
ask you this, Hannah. Why do you think that we're not hearing more teaching that's like practical application? Because I know as a young mom, and now a little bit older of a mom, we can get in the Word and we can really pray, and the Holy Spirit will give us and guide us and give us direction.
Mhm.
But I wonder if we're speaking to people now who are maybe they have kids our age, and maybe older, um, and they think, I've already messed up. I've already given my kids a cell phone. I've already created this environment that they're dependent on all of these things. And yes, I'm experiencing less peace in my home, right? Because of all of this. What do we say to those parents at this point? I mean, I've really challenged myself in conversation. What do they do at this point?
I mean, I actually last week had a conversation with a mom. And again, one thing that we're always doing to better ourselves is to ask questions. Like,
Mhm.
never, I guess it's that humility, but never feel like you cannot ask someone that has gone before you, what would they do? Have they made this mistake? Have they come to this bridge yet? I asked a few moms that were a little bit older, had kiddos in high school. What do y'all do about sleepovers?
Yeah.
And I was like, we're planning on not doing sleepovers. I mean, I know that our kids are going to be like, y'all aren't fun. And there's going to be a lot of, and both of those moms said if there's one piece of advice I could give any younger mom is just start it now. Because they were like, our kids are now older and we're just now like, we can't do this. This is not okay, especially for boys and the things that they have access to. And both of them were like, start it now, start it while they're young, make it a thing. And I was so glad that I asked because that was what we were already thinking. But to hear other moms, and I have so much respect because it's not like they had folded and said, well, they're already this age and we're just going to go ahead. But they were like, it's so, 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 so hard. It's so, so hard, but we're going to do it now.
Yeah.
I would say to those moms, it's never too late. You're never past learning. You're
Right.
never past bettering yourself. And you're never past doing the right thing for your kids.
Oh, you're
Um,
so right.
I struggle with that a lot because I'm like, gosh, Asher just turned 7, and I feel like we missed so many important things with him that we're now like trying to implement with Ames. You know what I mean? But God's grace is his mercy is new every morning. And that's something that like God has said to me over the last few weeks is his mercy is new every morning. And if that is so, and it is because it's his word, then that means the same for our children. His mercies are new. He has grace. He has mercy. And he knows our hearts, and he knows that we can continue to pour into them as best we can. And even if that means saying, you know what? Back then, we didn't know XYZ, and now we've made the decision to do this. And
Yeah.
we're sorry, but this is the choice that we've made. Just having humility enough to say, okay, kids, we got it wrong. I'm sorry
Yeah.
that we set that standard, but we're raising the standard.
That's right. That's exactly right. And gosh, that's important for kids to see as well. Because I remember I used to really be, I don't want to say jealous, but a little bit jealous of people who could say they had never had a fight in their marriage. Their kids had never witnessed them arguing, all of the things. And I remember Cody telling me one day, he said, you know, we aren't perfect in our marriage, but what we are teaching our kids is to grow to
Yes.
grow in our marriage and to learn and allow the Holy Spirit to move and to teach us. And they need to see, I think it's important for kids to see that in their parents that, you know, and Cody and I would say we don't yell. That's something we don't do, but we haven't been perfect. But we
Right.
will go to our kids and say, we are so sorry, and take
Yes.
ownership of it so that they can do that someday when they're older.
I actually think of like Sunday mornings and we're like always late for church. And Shay and I are always kind of like at each other's throats because it's always someone's fault. And then we kind of like start bickering at each other. And I usually will take a breath and be like, either we don't need to like have this between us in front of our kids, or we need to do it in a way that's going to be beneficial. And there have been times where Shay will turn around and be like, boys, I'm sorry that mommy and daddy were, grouchy with one another, or that we were arguing in front of you, but it's important for them to see you work that out in a healthy way so they know. Because I think we also came from a generation where you stuff everything under the rug and everything's fine. And that's not a healthy coping mechanism, because then your kids don't know how, they don't know how to like approach that when they are married. Like, how do you have conflict?
No, you're exactly right.
Okay. Are there any other hot topics?
There is one that I've been thinking about. And this one maybe not as controversial.
Okay.
But it is something that is a pattern, I feel like, within our society that really, I've thought about my parents and things that they did right.
Okay.
Sometimes we can really think back and we're thinking, man, I don't know that was perfect. And my parents, they did a lot of things right. And the older I get and the more I find myself parenting the way that they did, they did a lot right. And one of the things they taught Shay, Gabby, and I was to treat each other a certain way. And that was with a lot of love. And one of the things Mom constantly said was, love thinks the best. And, even within my own home, there's been times they're different ages. And so they will really get on each other's nerves and they'll start fighting or something like that. And my reaction as a parent, it's almost like just an automatic. I do what my mom did. And I say, guys, those are your siblings. You love, you always think the best. You always love each other. You do not repay evil for evil. You love each other. And I do not allow the all out brawling situation among my kids. And I have seen this in society. It's like, you just give what someone else gives. You return the same energy. And that to me is a biblical principle that the church is getting away from. And that really concerns me, because just like we talked earlier about training in the home, it starts with your siblings. It starts with your siblings and your parents. And I've thought a lot about that lately and I don't know what your thoughts are, but as your babies are younger and that just happens when they're young, but it is a training time and I've seen you do it. No, love your brother. You correct that instead of, well, hit her back.
Yeah. My big thing is like, what's the golden rule? How would you want to be treated in this situation? And so I always make them go back and I'm like, would you want your brother to have done that to you? No. Should you have done that to him? No. Okay, make better choices.
I know exactly what you're saying, and you're exactly right, because, there's a lot about speaking life and death. And there's something to be said about speaking something to existence, even if it's not quite there yet. Yeah, but there's also a huge epidemic of telling kids that people reward bad behavior,
right?
And so you make a great point. It's important that we speak truth to our kids as well. And when they are behaving a certain way, tell them the truth. It doesn't mean that one action defines the rest of their life, or one behavior defines who they are. Thank the Lord. But we can't just ignore that behavior. Can't just ignore those things because it does not allow for growth.
You just see the adult that child becomes. You can just see examples of, it's like, reading the parenting books, but it's like they stay stunted emotionally. And so it may be a grown man, but emotionally, they are remaining like a 12-year-old boy who, still throws the fit to get his way, or, whatever the behavior is, it's just on an adult level.
Yep. You made a
Uh,
really interesting point a while ago that I would love for you to talk more on. And that is correcting each other when you're parenting.
yes. Shay
Uh,
and I have tried really hard to not correct each other
yeah.
in front of our children and in front of other people.
Well,
Um,
yeah.
we've gotten better at it. But again, that has taken a lot of communication and a lot of fights over the years of being like, hey, thanks for saying that in front of everyone,
Yeah.
even if it's joking, like just don't say it. Just don't say it.
I know.
Take the time. And again, that's part of the respect. Respect your husband enough to pull him aside and say, hey, um, next time the boys do this, can you say this?
Yeah.
Because there are things that I'm like, this is just a personal, like, I just don't like the wording of that.
Yes.
Simple as that. Like, but I'm not going to say that in front of our boys because then it becomes, well, mommy, isn't that right, Mom? And I hate that. I hate it when, and Ames is on a kick right now where he's like, mommy is right and daddy is not. And even that is, I'm like, he's on my team about this. But I'm like, mommy's not always right, Ames. And just making sure that they know
That we're on the same team.
yes.
But I love that you are real about that because it is something that, marriage and parenting go so hand in hand. If you are not close enough, if you don't trust your partner enough or respect your partner enough to be able to have those conversations, you really miss out on one of the greatest mentors that you will ever have in your life. And because Cody constantly, I look at him and I think, I want to be more like that. I always call him the Andy Griffith of our house, but I used to take such a defense against his correction. And he's always really good to pull me aside and maybe not even in the moment. Like he'll give me some time and he'll explain to me, hey, when you said this and I've always really hated that until the last several years. And I think that that shows that I really trust him and I've seen that he is such a good parent and what he says is true. And so, I think that's important. Be as a woman, as an independent, feisty personality, being able to, like you said, humble myself a little bit and say, I mean, babe, what would you, and now I would say, what would you do in this situation?
Yes. Yes. And I think you nailed it. I think that one question right there allows them to lead.
Yeah.
Because you are A, welcoming them into a problem, and B, you are showing them that you respect their opinion, you're looking to them for leadership, you're looking to them for advice, and that they're your helpmate. I mean, I think that that's like the ultimate form of communication is to open up the floor and to be willing to be not offended.
That's right. You have to decide that before.
Right.
You have to decide that before that you're not going to be offended.
Yes. Because what if they're like, well, babe, I think that you're babying the kids.
Right.
I'm going to have to decide beforehand to be like, okay, I mean, maybe I am. Maybe you have a point.
Yep.
Just to go ahead because you're on the same team.
Yep.
And like, it's the team of our entire family. So it's not, no one's going to win. Like if we're fighting, no one's going to win. And I think communication has become much better between Shay and I. And I think, again, it's that willingness to not be offended, the humility. And honestly, sometimes we just, sometimes in the middle of fighting, nowadays, this shows our growth. Sometimes if we start off really rough in the morning, Shay will just take my hand and be like, you know what? I just rebuke the spirit of offense. And we'll just start praying.
Just press that reset.
And just be like, this is your day. And you know what I love to do? I love to consecrate my day to the Lord. I
I
will
love
start
that.
my
I
day
love that.
and say, God, I consecrate this day to you. I consecrate my marriage to you, my words and my actions, my emotions. It's all yours. My husband, yours. My kids, they're yours because they are. No one loves them more than you love them. If you start your day by giving that, like verbally, you're like, God, consecrate them to
That's so
you.
good.
It's
I've
so
been doing
free.
that since you shared that with me. I've been doing that on my way to work. And
Mhm.
you know
It
what it
kind of
does?
makes you want.
It yes. And it also says, Lord, what are we doing today?
Yeah,
It's not just like, it's partnering with his
it's hard.
agenda.
Mhm.
Yeah. I love
It's
that.
like, God, it's like, God, you know what? I know you love him. I know
That's
you love
right.
him more than I do. So you go ahead and take him and just like let me know if there's anything I can help you with. Like
Exactly.
just bring anything to mind that like I could be doing to help whatever you want for my family today.
That is the most freeing. And I never did that when I was younger. And I think it's because and this is just a real talk, is that I think I know I didn't trust God like I do.
Mhm.
The older I get, the more I trust the Lord. And I see the saints that my grandmother, and I see saints in the church that I go to, our parents. And I always wonder, why are they so, like, just feels like they are constantly talking to the Lord. And now I know it's because they trust God way more than they trust themselves.
Yeah.
Because they've seen the goodness of God. And man, we have such a testimony as a family. I mean,
Mm.
God has we've been a mess many, many times, and God just continues and continues to save us and continues to show his faithfulness to us. And so I just trust him more. I'd rather him run my day than
Absolutely. And and again, that's that I guess that's a part of the discipline of like getting older. And again, that's also we're going on 8 years of marriage. So I feel like you reach a certain point where you're like, wow, the first few years I really tried hard to control things. And how did
yeah,
that go for us?
yeah.
Hey,
One thing we had talked about that we were going to talk about, and I want to know your thoughts. Boundaries in marriage.
okay. This is like a hot topic for me right now just because I did an interview a month or so back and it blew up. And I would like to say in a good way, but so many people were just ragging on the boundary situation that we were discussing in marriage. And it's really hard not to get defensive um, because you're like, you don't know this life that we live. You don't know anything that goes into it. So, A, how dare you say anything about the boundaries that I have in my marriage? You don't know
Right.
us. You don't know our life. But B, then I step back and I'm like, you know what? This is a really broken world. And this is, again, the enemy coming to attack the family unit. And I think one of the most like strong things that you can put in place around your family is boundaries around your marriage. And I think it's important for your kids to see that. And I think it's important also for your spouse to know and have that sense of security. There are boundaries that Shay and I put in place, just really simple things and things that we don't even, never had issues there, but the boundary is there regardless, just as a parameter of like, it's like going to therapy. You do it as what's the word I'm looking for? Preventative.
We've talked about, many times fences, boundaries are there to protect.
Right.
They're not there
Not to
to
trap you, but
trap
to
you.
protect you.
That's right. Yep.
Yes.
And this concept, you and I have talked about this several times because you are my confidant in many, many ways. And it's shocking within the church how little emphasis we put on putting boundaries in your marriage.
hmm
And it feels like an
Oh,
act.
absolutely. I think, I remember my sister telling me this years ago, like when I was in college. when I was just dating. And my sister was like, you can never, ever, like, there can never just be a friendship between a boy and a girl.
Yeah. Oh, let's
And,
just talk about it. If we're going to talk about it, let's talk about it.
and I was like, I was always, okay, full disclosure, I was like picked on a lot and bullied a lot by a lot of girls. And so for me, and I was a tomboy, but for me, boys just felt less drama. Boys felt safer, and not in a flirty kind of way, just like boys weren't mean and girls were a little bit mean. And so when my sister said this, I was like, I don't know, like boys have always been nicer to me than girls. But then by saying that, you're like, oh, well, like maybe there was motivation there for that. But I just remember her saying, there will always be someone on either side that will have feelings, whether they're known or not. Right?
If you don't think the enemy wants your marriage, if you think that you are the one marriage that would never be tempted, if you think you're the one person that would never be tempted to step out, having an affair, you're making the most epic mistake. Cody and I've had this conversation very candidly of, hey, I love you so much. I know that you would never, ever do this intentionally. But we both know that if we are so prideful to think that we are the one marriage that would never happen to you, I mean, it's not reality. And I think that, it's not cool in our culture. It's not cool it looks like not trusting your spouse if you have these boundaries. And that's what's dangerous.
Especially for women. I feel like for women, it looks like, oh, well, she's crazy or she's possessive or she's territorial. It's more like, I'm trying to think of a good example. I'll give you an example. I have guy friends in my life from high school or college. And if any one of them messages me or texts me, I'm going to let Shay know about it. And none of it is, and I mean, I'm talking like even like guys that are married and they and their wives are coming to town. Like I will be like, hey, so and so, just out of respect, just transparency. I even have guy friends that at this point, I'm like, I have connected you to Shay now, and now y'all could be friends. But I'm kind of a little bit removed from this situation just because I'm like, I'm a married woman now. And like,
yes,
would I want my husband texting a like friend from high school that's a girl? Well, probably not. No.
It changes from being, I think the simple truth here is, and a way to measure it, I think, is if you have a person in your life of the opposite sex, whether they're working with you or, whatever the relationship may have evolved from, it doesn't mean it's bad. It just means that when you're married, you don't have a separate relationship that doesn't involve your spouse that he's unaware of, and you're talking and sharing and they're not. If you ever feel like you need a text, then that's a sign. If you feel like you wouldn't want them to see your conversation, that's a sign.
Yes.
It doesn't mean that I have a really healthy relationships with my coworkers, with people in the community that I love dearly that are not women. But like you said, Cody is aware of each and every one of those. And it's kind of challenging sometimes because as you know, I'm in real estate, so you have lots of conversations. It doesn't matter. It's so important. And it goes back to respecting my husband. You know what else I do? Everybody knows about that too. Everybody knows whenever I talk to people, I talk about Cody. It's me and Cody,
Because that here is you putting your marriage before you and saying, that's giving honor and respect to your husband. I feel like that is what that is. And also it's simply protecting, because it could be a matter of like, oh, can I get your opinion on the, for women, the need is emotional, right? And for men, the need is respect. And so, if by chance there's some conversation had where all of a sudden a woman starts feeling like this guy that she was texting for something else, all of a sudden she feels she can confide in him about something, it's just a slippery slope. And
Yes, it
that's
is.
just a door that you can easily like shut before anyone's foot is in it.
That's right. Although you in your own right are just absolutely model beautiful. You also just, it would be hard for me, I feel like, to have a husband that does what Shay does. And I feel like you put up boundaries without taking away Shay's love for people, the way that God has gifted him. Is you're just the perfect balance to Shay. And
I think,
but I really admired the way that you put up boundaries without it. Like you said, you're not trapping, you're protecting. You know,
right.
um,
Yes.
um, I admire your. I admire Shay as well because he does such a good job with this in his career. Um, when you've got thousands of screaming fans, and they're beautiful women,
Yeah.
but he knows what he has. He has a treasure in his family and his wife, and it's something that he is diligent as a man to protect. And one of the things you told me early on, that girls aren't on the bus.
Yeah.
That's a boundary that Shay puts up.
It's like a
You know,
band rule. Like
it's
girls
a
are,
band rule. It's an intentional thing. So why wouldn't we do that? It's not, it's for everybody to do that. We have to do that. Um,
Mhm.
it's just, it's so
Yeah.
important.
Maybe we'll just like poke our finger in like one more hot topic.
Yeah.
I briefly mentioned this again on that one episode, but I just am very aware of the attack that the enemy has on young couples and divorce, anyone in divorce, really. But I just hate the way that the the media, the mainstream media, is pushing the I don't even know, celebrating the whole like you should get
Divorce
divorced, you
parties.
should get your freedom, you should go party it up, like no man is your boss. This you're not made to be a housewife, like this whole thing. Um, because I actually think it's really evil and deceptive to women. I think that women are missing the thing that like would fulfill them more than anything. I'm not saying that women cannot do both. I actually wrote a post on marriage a couple of years ago, and it was just speaking to the woman who thinks that she cannot have both family and marriage and also the career. And I'm not even ashamed to say this. Someone that commented on it is like has a huge career, but she also has children. And when I say like a huge career, and she commented on it and she was like, I couldn't agree more. And I just think that that in itself is validating to a lot of women who are on there going, huh. Because I also had a lot of pushback. I also had a lot of comments saying, well, what year were you born in? So much for the feminist movement. Like, you think that, no, I'm just telling you without a shadow of doubt that God, like a child to a woman is the greatest blessing that you could ever have. It's the thing that's going to change you and grow you and better you more than any job, any career, anything you could come back to at any age.
You said one thing and it's a deception.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that word in itself is just, that's the main point in all of that. The celebration of divorce, the celebration of things that used to, it was a
It was
shameful,
taboo.
to be
It
honest,
was
it was a shameful thing. And I'm absolutely sensitive and aware
no
that
one
it
should be
takes
shamed.
people. We understand that divorce is going to happen. And what you're saying is just celebration as a society of a failed marriage.
Right.
I do not understand this. And you're exactly right. Young women are seeing this. and they think that that is normal. There's even a celebration of I'm on my fifth husband, or celebration of I want to marry somebody wealthy, or I want to marry somebody like this. It all comes down to the deception that self-serving, being selfish, thinking about what makes me happy all of those things are gonna make me happy. And it's a deception because God's way is the best way. And we know this. And we are speaking to this because we've experienced this. We've experienced what it means to die to ourselves and leave a life of, just all about me, have babies, have a marriage and accountability and things like that. And God's way works. And I will say this, it's worked for generations. It statistically worked for generations. It's not just take my word for it. It's not just biblical. It's something that we see statistically that if children are at home with both a mother and a father, that they are going to thrive in that environment much more than if one parent walks away. And so why are we celebrating?
Yeah.
Why are we celebrating
brokenness
that is broken? I'm with you 100% on this. And here's the thing. People can say whatever they want to about it and feel however they want to about it. And the sad things about our society is even when you bring facts to the table, they still want to deny it because of their feelings. Guess what feelings? They lie to you. Emotions lie to you. So it's something that we're teaching our kids. It's something that we're training in. And absolutely, it shouldn't even be a hot topic, but you're right, it is. And I'm proud of you and I'm proud of women who are saying, wait a minute, you know what? I love you enough to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
And that's what we're missing. We're missing people who are bold enough to tell the truth.
That's right. And I think, okay, we'll just end it with this because this is actually really fresh on my mind. I think that we live in a really dangerous time culturally where we are pushed and pushed and pushed to be apathetic and to be what's the word? Affirming. To be affirming and to affirm people's choices and their decisions and their sin, honestly.
Sure.
The reason that the church is in the world is to set the standard. And we are to do so in love. And we are to act as Jesus acted. And I hate when people twist and turn and say, well, Jesus ate with the sinners. And yes, he did. He went there so that he could touch their lives and give them hope and help them transform their lives and turn from that life. He did not go there to celebrate their sin. And I think that's where the church has become either lukewarm or quiet. They just don't want to say anything because they don't want to offend. They want to affirm. It's like that saying, all are welcome here. Well, there's a second half. All are welcome. Come as you are, but don't stay as you are.
Come on. That is so good because you know what? I didn't stay the same. God is constantly, and it's not that this sin or this sin or this sin is any worse than my sin.
Yeah.
It's that what I've seen in my life that has set me free, the truth will always set you free. That's something that just comes to my mind often when I'm talking about something like this. When you truly understand that when you love people, if you love people as Jesus loved them, with agape love, everlasting, unconditional love, then you are willing to step into that conversation a lot more. And you're exactly right. And it breaks my heart. It's a whole other. There's so many other conversations of how does that happen? How do people get set free of all of these things that we're seeing? But the truth will set them free. It starts with the truth.
It starts with the truth, but also, do you have people around you who are willing to tell you the truth? If you do not have people in your life who will hold you accountable, and I have people in my life that I've tried to hold accountable in love, and they exited. But I have peace about that because I know that I did what God called me to do. I love them. I love them. I still love them. You know what I mean? I love them so much, but I didn't love them enough to stand by and continue to affirm choices that went against everything that they claim to be wanting, you know? And I just think that's important. Just have someone in your life who is a reciprocal, who loves you and who you trust and is like a sister to you. I mean, you are. You are my sister, so I can say that. But it's so important. You have that reciprocal person. You can pour into each other. And then you also can go out, you can be a mentor and you can be mentored. Those are the 3 relationships. So have a mentor, be mentoring someone, and also have that reciprocal right there in the middle that can pour into you and you can pour into, and you will have that accountability person who is separate from your husband. I think that's so important. Also, the same sex. I'm going to throw that one in there just because we're talking about same sex. Shay needs to have a reciprocal man in his life, and he does have, and I have you. So, sis, I love you.
I love you. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for sharing your platform, and thank you for always speaking true. I'm so proud of you, and I love you so much.
I love you. I'll see you later.
Thank you so much for listening today. If this episode has encouraged you, please feel free to share the show with your family and friends. There's a lot of stuff going on in the world today, and my hope is that this show is a candle in the dark.